My stepmom called CPS on my dad after I exposed her abuse in front of the whole family, then told everyone she's just dramatic. When I told her I had photos of the bruises, she went pale and whispered, "You wouldn't dare." I stayed silent. That was 10 months ago. This morning, she was screaming at her lawyer in the courthouse lobby while her sons refused to look at her. My stepmom gave me one rule when she moved in with my dad and I. If I had time to lean, I had time to clean. She demanded that I be productive at all times. And I mean at all times. That meant I had to text, call, or email her showing her with proof that I was being productive with timestamps. She said it was the only way to hold me accountable with no excuses. At the end of every day, she had her computer ready with the family spreadsheet for me to log in. The whole purpose of this all was to make sure I wasn't wasting my life away. I followed her dumb rule at first, mainly out of curiosity. And on the first day she checked, she bent me over and slapped my behind with a leather tool for every hour that I was unproductive. Meanwhile, her 2 sons could play FIFA all day with no consequences. And I was already an overachiever, the type to feel like I was a failure unless I got all A's. So this only made it worse. And it wasn't until 3 months later that I finally saw through her BS. Because one day, after I had an extremely productive 24 hours, she still slapped me. The reason? For eating lunch for 15 minutes without making it productive through multitasking. But I didn't stop following her rule. In fact, I followed it even more. Because if Stella wanted to track every single hour of my day, I would do just that. I started tracking absolutely everything. And I mean everything. I logged the Excel sheet with BS like 7:23 p.m. to 7:24 p.m., productive blinking session, maintained eye moisture for optimal vision, 10:15 a.m. to 10:30 a.m., productive oxygen exchange via breathing, converting oxygen to carbon dioxide. At first, I could tell it made her eyes twitch with stress, but she was able to brush it off and calm herself down, so I upped my game. I started spamming her with texts all day to ensure what I was doing was productive. "Hey Stella, do you think I should read Wuthering Heights or Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde during lunch today? How long do you think I should take in the bathroom if I'm taking a number 2 while slightly constipated? Productivity alert, currently producing saliva at an above average rate. The day is going well." At the end of each day during our productivity review sessions, I would present slideshows about what I did in between each bite of food I took, every thought I had while walking to and from school, and every word that me and my friends exchanged, rating them all from 1 to 10 on a productivity scale, deciding how many times Stella should hit me. I would drag them out until she was so tired she fell asleep. And as soon as she did, I'd shake her awake and tell her we weren't being productive if she wasn't listening to me. When her parents came to visit, I interrupted every few minutes with a question. "Sorry, Stella, but I've been awake for almost 30 hours trying to be productive. Is it okay if I sleep for a little bit, or is that too unproductive? I'm gonna play an audiobook while I sleep." Her parents glared at her, not knowing if it was a joke. Her mom even asked if I was on the spectrum. The breaking point came at a family reunion 3 months later. It was me, my dad, my stepmom, and both of their sides of the family. Right when everyone was eating and the garden was silent, I came running out in tears. "Stella, I'm sorry! I just realized that when I went to the bathroom, I didn't bring any reading material with me, which makes me a lazy piece of shit like you always say." She tried to laugh it off as a joke, but that's when I took out the leather tool she hit me with and bent over in front of her. "Just hit me! I deserve it this time." Her mom gasped. My grandparents on my dad's side looked like they were about to faint. "What the F is going on?" my grandmother said. Before Stella could answer, I responded with, "Oh, I'm just not being productive right now, so I'm asking Stella to punish me like she always does." Stella's face turned ghost white. That's not what," she stammered. "Oh, I have photos of the bruises if you need documentation," I exclaimed. "I've been productively documenting everything like Stella taught me. Should I go get them?" Her father stood up. "Bruises? What bruises?" Even my dad, for the first time, finally spoke up. "I think it's time for you to leave," he said, turning to Stella. She didn't even fight it. She knew she couldn't. And with that, she finally left. The rest of the barbecue was pretty awkward after that, and everyone made excuses for why they had to go home. And TBH, I felt like a winner. It was the moment I had been dreaming about ever since Stella first moved in. The next day at school, the creepy guidance counselor pulled me aside and demanded that I lift up my sleeves. I hesitated, but he grabbed my arm and did it himself. That's when he was faced with the bruises. "Your stepmom was right. Your dad has been hitting you." I tried explaining through tears that it wasn't my dad, but the counselor wouldn't listen. He dragged me down the hallway toward the principal's office, his grip tight on my wrist. My heart pounded as we burst through the door. The principal sat behind his desk with 2 police officers and a woman in a gray suit standing beside him. The counselor pushed me into a chair. The woman in gray stepped forward. She introduced herself as a CPS worker and explained they'd received a call about suspected abuse. My stomach dropped. Stella had called them. She'd planned this whole thing. I pulled out my phone with shaking hands, scrolling through thousands of productivity texts. The CPS worker took it, her eyebrows rising as she read. She looked at the officers, then back at me. She set the phone down carefully. Her voice turned gentle but firm. These detailed logs showed clear signs of coercion. Someone had forced me to write them. The elaborate documentation actually proved abuse, not disproved it. The principal called my dad. 20 minutes later, he rushed through the door looking confused and worried. Before he could speak, the officers moved toward him. I jumped up, screaming that Stella had done this, begging them to check my logs properly. The handcuffs clicked around his wrists. He stared at me in shock as they read him his rights. The CPS worker explained I'd be placed in emergency foster care while they investigated. My phone would be kept as evidence. Everything happened so fast. They loaded me into a car while my dad got put in the back of a police cruiser. Through the window, I saw him mouthing that he loved me. The foster home smelled like vanilla candles and cat litter. The couple seemed nice enough, showing me to a small bedroom with faded superhero wallpaper. That night, lying in the unfamiliar bed, everything clicked. Stella knew exactly what would happen. She'd studied psychology, specialized in troubled youth. She knew they'd assume it was my father. The next morning at school felt surreal. Kids whispered as I walked past. During lunch, Brady and Marcus approached my table. Brady smirked while Marcus looked uncomfortable. They told me their mom said hi from their new apartment. She'd filed for emergency custody of them, claiming our household was violent. My hands clenched into fists. She'd gotten everything she wanted. Her sons back, my dad in jail, and me trapped in foster care, all because she knew how the system worked. That afternoon, my dad's lawyer called the foster home. He couldn't discuss details but asked to speak with me briefly. When I got on the phone, he told me to keep documenting everything, then hung up quickly. I found a notebook in my backpack and started writing. Day 1, separated from my dad, who never hurt me because of my stepmom. stepmom who did. The words looked strange on paper, like they belonged to someone else's life. My foster parents, Catherine and Jonathan, made spaghetti for dinner. They asked gentle questions about school and my interests. When I mentioned what happened, Catherine exchanged a look with Jonathan. They'd fostered other kids who protected abusive parents. It was common, they said. Kids often covered for the people who hurt them. I wanted to scream that they had it backwards, but I stayed quiet. Who would believe me? The next few days blurred together. I discovered I could still access my cloud storage from the school computers. All my productivity spreadsheets were there. Months of documentation. But when I looked closer, I found new entries I hadn't written. Entries dated weeks ago describing concerning aggression from me. My blood ran cold. Stella had added them after leaving. Brady started texting from a burner phone. His messages were short but chilling. If I told the truth about what really happened, his mom would release recordings. What recordings? Then I remembered all those productivity review sessions. She'd been recording them. Audio of her hitting me that would sound like a man doing it. The CPS worker scheduled an interview. I brought printed spreadsheets, hoping she'd see the pattern. Instead, she focused on why my father had made me document everything. Every piece of evidence I showed got twisted. The more I tried to explain, the more it looked like I was covering for him. My grandparents on my dad's side hired a private investigator. He uncovered something that made my skin crawl. Stella had done this before. 3 previous stepchildren. 3 different states. Same productivity rules, same outcome. Fathers blamed and jailed while she walked free. They tracked down one of her previous stepkids. When I heard about him, my heart sank. He wouldn't talk to anyone about what happened. The investigator said he showed signs of lasting trauma. His only advice was to let her win because fighting made it worse. My foster siblings had their own horror stories about the system failing them. They'd seen kids return to abusive homes, watched real victims get ignored while innocent people got punished. The girl in the room next to mine had been in 12 different homes. Talk about productivity taken to its logical extreme. Stella managed to weaponize Excel spreadsheets and turn time management into psychological warfare, while her own kids played video games all day. She told me proving the truth was almost impossible once CPS made up their minds. Dad's bail hearing arrived. I wasn't allowed to go, but Jonathan drove me past the courthouse. Through the car window, I saw Stella walking up the steps in a conservative dress, playing the concerned witness perfectly. She'd probably brought those edited recordings. That night, my grandmother snuck a visit while my foster parents were at the grocery store. She slipped me a cheap prepaid phone and hugged me tight. She believed me, she said. So did my grandfather. They knew my dad would never hurt anyone. She told me to keep fighting before Catherine's car pulled into the driveway. I hid the phone under my mattress and spent hours researching Stella online. Her psychology degree came from a good university. Her thesis had focused on intervention strategies for troubled youth. She understood the system inside and out, every bias, every assumption. She'd weaponized her education against us. Brady's Instagram story popped up on the hidden phone. For just a moment before he deleted it, I saw Stella in their new apartment. She stood next to a trash can fire in their backyard, throwing in what looked like my belongings. The caption read, "Erasing the problem child," with a laughing emoji. I managed to screenshot it before it vanished. Evidence, finally. But the next morning, Catherine found the phone during a routine room check. The disappointment in her eyes hurt more than anger would have. Trust, once broken, was hard to rebuild. They confiscated the phone and said we'd need to discuss boundaries. The screenshot was gone with the phone. Another piece of evidence lost. Stella stayed 3 steps ahead while I stumbled in the dark, trying to prove a truth no one wanted to hear. The therapy session started the following week. Catherine drove me to a small office building downtown, where Dr. Peterson waited with a practiced smile. She specialized in trauma recovery for foster children, Catherine explained during the ride. The sessions were mandatory for all kids in the system. Dr. Peterson's office had motivational posters and a box of tissues on every surface. She asked about my feelings towards Stella, but every answer I gave got reframed. When I described the productivity torture, she nodded sympathetically and asked why I felt angry enough to create such elaborate stories about my stepmother. When I showed her photos of the bruises on my phone that Catherine had returned for the session, she gently suggested that self-harm often manifested in abuse victims who needed to externalize their pain. I realized Stella had probably coached her. The questions all led in the same direction, pushing me to admit my father was the real abuser. Dr. Peterson kept circling back to my misplaced anger and protective feelings toward him. By the 3rd session, I stopped trying to convince her. I gave vague answers and stared at the clock, counting down the minutes. My friends from school tried visiting the foster home, but Catherine turned them away. They might interfere with my healing process, she explained. The isolation felt deliberate, cutting me off from anyone who might believe my version of events. I watched from my bedroom window as they walked away, shoulders slumped in defeat. The news about Dad's upcoming trial date arrived through his lawyer. A brief phone call informed me that Stella would serve as the prosecution's key witness. My stomach churned as I processed this information. She'd orchestrated everything perfectly, positioning herself as the brave stepmother who'd exposed an abusive household. That evening, I found Stella's Facebook page on the foster home computer during homework time. She'd made it public, probably intentionally. Post after post detailed her survival story and escape from domestic violence. Hundreds of supportive comments flooded each update. People called her brave, inspiring, a hero for protecting children. The most recent post included a link to a local news article. The headline made my hands shake. Brave stepmother exposes abusive household, saves children from violent father. They'd blurred my face in the accompanying photo, but anyone who knew me would recognize the school uniform. The article quoted Stella extensively about the warning signs she'd noticed and her difficult decision to involve authorities. School became unbearable after the article. Kids whispered wherever I went. Some called me an abuse defender. Others said worse things. During lunch, someone threw food at me while yelling that I was protecting a monster. The teachers pretended not to notice. Even my favorite English teacher avoided eye contact in the hallways. 2 weeks into my stay at Catherine and Jonathan's, they received an anonymous complaint. The envelope slid under their door contained a typed letter warning them about harboring a violent and unstable child who might harm their other foster kids. Catherine showed it to me with worried eyes. The typing looked familiar, but I couldn't prove Stella had sent it. By the weekend, my social worker had arranged a transfer to a different foster home. The second placement was stricter. Mr. and Mrs. Davidson ran their home like a detention center. No phone access, no computer time without direct supervision, and constant monitoring. They'd fostered difficult children before, they told me during intake. They knew how to handle kids with behavioral issues. Marcus showed up at my school school the following Monday. He found me sitting alone at lunch, slipping into the seat across from me. His whispered words made my blood freeze. His mom had video footage from the family reunion, he warned. The security cameras at her parents' house had captured everything, including me asking for punishment. Out of context, it looked like a child trained to lie about discipline. He left as quickly as he'd appeared, but the damage was done. Dad's lawyer tried submitting my productivity logs as evidence, but the judge ruled them inadmissible hearsay. Without my direct testimony, which the court deemed too traumatic for me to provide, the spreadsheets meant nothing. Stella's lawyer argued the logs actually proved my father's obsessive control. Every piece of evidence I'd carefully collected got twisted into proof of his guilt. The CPS worker recommended terminating Dad's parental rights during a meeting I wasn't supposed to overhear. She cited severe psychological abuse and coercive control. The Davidsons had left their office door cracked, and I heard every word from the hallway. They discussed my refusal to acknowledge abuse and protective delusions about my father. Desperation drove me to attempt running away. I slipped out during a school bathroom break and made it halfway to my grandmother's house before a police officer spotted me. The failed escape earned me a new label, flight risk. The Davidsons couldn't handle flight risks, so I got transferred again. The group home was nothing like the foster placements. Ancient Oaks housed 12 kids between ages 13 and 17, most with histories of violence or severe behavioral problems. My roommate had assault charges. The boy down the hall sold substances. During my first night, someone stole my shoes. During the second, I learned to sleep with one eye open. Ms. Wilmort noticed the changes in me immediately. My English teacher had always been observant, but now she seemed genuinely concerned. She kept me after class one afternoon, closing the door carefully before speaking. She remembered when Stella's first stepson had been her student years ago. The same productivity rules, the same sudden removal from home, the same father blamed for everything. She'd kept files, 3 different kids over 8 years, all with the same strange documentation habits, all removed from their homes after reporting abuse by their fathers. All 3 had Stella as a stepmother. Ms. Wilmort had noticed the pattern but hadn't connected the dots until now. Together, we spent lunch periods in her classroom, building a timeline. 2 of Stella's previous victims agreed to speak with Ms. Wilmort, though they insisted on protection. Their stories mirrored mine exactly. Productivity spreadsheets, leather tool punishments, fathers who never fought back to avoid seeming violent. One showed scars that matched my bruises perfectly. The other described the same recording tactics Stella had used on me. My grandparents mortgaged their house to hire a better lawyer. The new attorney, Mr. Perkins, specialized in false accusation cases. He saw the patterns immediately and filed a motion to examine Stella's electronic devices. Her response was predictable. She claimed they'd been stolen in a break-in the previous week. No police report existed for this supposed theft. Brady cracked under the pressure at school. During a counseling session, he admitted to the school therapist that his mom had made him lie about my dad. The therapist called CPS immediately, but by the time they arrived, Stella was already there. She spun the story perfectly, claiming her children were traumatized by their exposure to an abusive household. Brady recanted everything when she stared at him. A forensic expert examined photos of my bruises at Mr. Perkins's request. The pattern, he explained in his report, was consistent with self-defense rather than attack. The angle and grouping suggested someone had grabbed my arms while I tried to protect myself, not the marks of an aggressive assault. The judge finally allowed this testimony. Stella's parents reached out to Mr. Perkins directly. They'd watched their daughter manipulate situations since childhood, they admitted. They provided psychiatric records from when she was 12, showing a pattern of lying and manipulation. The therapist's notes described a child who would injure herself to get others in trouble, who created elaborate stories to control situations. Panicking at her parents' betrayal, Stella filed a restraining order against them. Her parents kept records from when she was 12. That's quite the paper trail Stella left behind, and I'm curious why they stayed quiet through multiple stepchildren if they knew about these patterns all along. In her haste, she made a crucial mistake. The filing included an admission that she'd disciplined me for my own good. Mr. Perkins pounced on this detail, filing an emergency motion to re-examine the entire case. The judge ordered a new investigation, though I had to remain at Ancient Oaks during the process. The group home had become genuinely dangerous. Fights broke out daily, and I'd already been injured twice. The staff did their best, but they were overwhelmed and understaffed. Stella's carefully maintained image started cracking. Some of her Facebook supporters began questioning inconsistencies in her story. The support group she'd cultivated split into factions, with some defending her and others expressing doubts. She posted increasingly frantic updates, each one slightly contradicting the last. Brady showed up at my grandmother's house on a Tuesday evening. He'd run away from Stella's apartment, begging for forgiveness and help. He revealed what I'd suspected all along. She hit them too when I wasn't around. The productivity rules had simply shifted to focus entirely on them. Marcus had fresh bruises hidden under his sleeves. Stella filed kidnapping charges against my grandmother within hours. The police forced Brady to return to his mother, despite his protests. My grandmother's lawyer advised her not to interfere further, warning that Stella would use any excuse to have her arrested. Through a gaming platform that Stella didn't monitor, Marcus sent me a secret recording. He'd captured audio of Stella threatening Brady after his escape attempt. Her words were chilling and specific. She told him he'd end up like the others who'd talked, kids who'd tried to expose her before. The threat was clear, even if she never said exactly what would happen. A fight at Ancient Oaks left me with a black eye and bruised ribs. The hospital visit revealed something the previous examinations had missed: old injuries that had never been properly treated. The doctor's report detailed extensive bruising patterns consistent with strikes from a leather implement. The pattern matched Stella's tool exactly, down to the width and spacing of impact marks. Stella tried claiming I'd inflicted the injuries on myself for attention. She posted about self-harm and abuse victims, trying to get ahead of the story. But then Adam, one of her previous victims, broke his silence. He came forward with photos of scars from a decade ago, marks that matched mine precisely. The same tool, the same patterns, the same lies about self-infliction. 2 more victims emerged after local news coverage of Adam's revelation. The pattern was undeniable now. Each had productivity spreadsheets, leather tool marks, and fathers who'd been blamed for everything. Each had been removed from their homes and placed in foster care. Each had been labeled as delusional or protective of their abuser. The district attorney began considering criminal charges against Stella. She hired an expensive attorney who specialized in defending